Okay, we're live. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, hi everyone. This is the executive meeting on the 2nd of Feb to consider the disposal of land at Nunthorpe Grange farm from a previous exec decision. First point on the agenda is apologies for absence. Do we have any of those?
None, Chair.
None at all. Okay. The second one is declarations of interest. Anyone declare anything, any interests? Okay, that's good. Point 3, we're going to take the advice of the monitoring officer, Charlotte Benjamin. So I'd invite Charlotte to speak about this, and we will take note of what Charlotte has to say.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, I hope you don't mind, could I just point out the date is the 9th of February, so we are live. I think you mentioned it was the 2nd, so just to clarify that, it's the 9th.
Do you know what? I'm a week.
February.
Yes, good point. I'm a week behind.
You're a week
yes,
behind.
Well said.
You're a week behind.
Well said. Just for the record, actually, both minuting it every day and week same at the moment, isn't it? So, yeah, it is the 9th. You're quite right.
So at this point on the agenda, Chair, I would like to recap my advice which I've given already to the Overview and Scrutiny Board at their meeting when they considered this matter. By way of background, the original call-in request was on 3 grounds. The first being that the original decision to dispose of the asset in question, the land at Nunthorpe Grange Farm, was a departure from the budget and policy framework, and that's the issue that I'm giving advice on. The other 2 issues which are to be considered today by executive were around the question whether inadequate consultation happened before the decision was taken, and whether the executive had inadequate information on which to base the decision. The Constitution requires that I provide advice along with the Section 151 officer, if that is appropriate, to consider whether the decision is actually a departure from the budget and policy framework, as was contended in the call-in request. So that's the basis for my advice. All members of executive have had a copy of my written advice. So what I'll do now, if that's okay, Chair, is just give a brief summary about that advice. The question whether you have to do anything about it is a matter for you. It's up to you whether you accept and note that advice. It's not something on which you have to take a vote specifically today. So I was asked to advise whether the executive decision departs from the council's budget and policy framework, and my advice is that the decision does not depart from the budget and policy framework. And as I've said, the report that I've produced explains the reasons why. In summary, the executive decision, the decision that was made by executive on the 24th of November last year, is about whether the council should sell the asset in question. Executive is not concerned with determining how the land should be used or developed, which is a matter for planning committee. The council's asset disposal policy is relevant to the executive decision to dispose of the land, and that policy was followed in this instance. The points raised in the call-in in support of the argument that the decision is outside of the budget and policy framework, those relating to the local plan and the Mayor's vision, are not directly relevant to the decision made by executive. They relate instead to the business of the planning committee. Of course, executive is at liberty to consider contextual information about the proposed use of the land by the purchaser, but that's not determinative to the issue in question, to their decision. So in summary, executive was concerned with the discrete question whether to dispose of the land at Nunthorpe Grange Farm. In taking the decision back in November, the executive did not depart from the budget and policy framework. So follow on from that, having accepted this advice, the Overview and Scrutiny Board took a decision that they did not want to send the matter back to Council for further consideration, accepting that the decision was within the Council's budget and policy framework. Thanks, Chair. I don't know whether at this point, Chair, Ian might want anything about the budget questions, i.e. whether the disposal was within the budget.
Okay. Do you know what? I think we should ask Ian to clarify the record, if you can.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, just to clarify that I'm fully in support of the monitoring officer's advice, and to say that the purpose of this disposal is to generate a capital receipt which underpins the investment strategy of the council and the NTFP associated with that budget, which is part of the council's budget policy framework. So it is part of the budget policy framework as far as I'm concerned. Thank you.
That's great, thank you. So before we go to whether the exec members want to make any points or raise any questions, I'll just summarise what I think Charlotte has just guided us that among the range of points that were raised at the exec meeting, there are two that we really need to consider now today. One being the suggestion of potential alternative uses for that land, and the other is actually about whether best value was achieved and whether that could be achieved by going out to tender or other means. Is that correct, Charlotte?
It is, yes, and the report from Janet Thompson as the Chair of Overview and Scrutiny Board will set out more in relation to OSB's rationale for sending the matter back to Executive for consideration of those points.
Great, thank you. Okay, any exec members with any comments or questions? Okay, looks like nobody. That's fine. Are there any members present who would like to ask a question or raise a point? I can see. Please go ahead, John.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I mean, I think the monitoring officer's advice was quite clear there, where she stated that the use and alternative use and proposed use of the site is not a material consideration and not a consideration of the executive, but it's there for planning, which then concerns me in respect of the executive's decision, because a lot of the discussion last time was regarding the safeguarding of the use of the site and preventing houses being a potential option. Well, obviously it's not a consideration for the executive, so it's therefore not something you can actually guarantee and prevent from happening. And the other factor is the lack of consultation. Whilst it's not required morally, should it have been done with residents first? And then the second part from the previous exec meeting is the chicken feed, whilst it's departure from previous history, but it was the chicken feed token gesture towards a community facility for residents. I think that should have been expanded on and broadened. I mean, we can't go into detail now, but given the capital receipts being referenced by the Section 151 officer and the difference between the capital receipt and the valuation, it should be significantly more than the 43,000 that's been mentioned previously by exec members, divided between two wards. So they're just things that I would like the executive to consider.
You're on mute, Chair.
I've got technology problems, so hang on. Hello, Chris. Yeah, please go ahead.
I would just like to say that with respect to consultation, the parish council have been consulted on this, and the parish council did have a meeting where Mr. Evershed from the Brethren turned up and explained that he was quite happy if there was some community facility on the land or communities involved in the Brethren building, and there was quite a discussion at the parish council, and I think that the consultation, considering this is about the sale of land, which we normally don't consider to consult with the residents, I think they had more consultation than any other ward where we've sold land. Thank you, Chair.
Yes, my machine is playing up between the camera and the mic. So thank you for that, Chris. Ashley Waters, would you like to speak?
Yeah, certainly. I think with this one, calling it chicken feed, I think it's highly disrespectful to what we're doing. I think this is a massive, massive shift from the way that the councils worked before and look to engage with community. And I think that the fact that we are looking to put this money directly back into the community, not depending on 106 money, not depending on any other money coming in, to give this money directly to the community, I think it's a massive shift from what we've done before, and I think it's a massive benefit. And obviously we're going to look at doing this across Middlesbrough, so it will affect everyone across Middlesbrough. So I think it's a brilliant decision. I think it is the way forward, that we need to engage better. And I think the consultation, I agree totally with Councillor Hobson, the consultation has been good on this one, and the feedback from it.
Sorry, Andy, we seem to have lost your sound again.
Hi, I don't know if you can hear me. You probably can't see me now. This machine is terrible today. I think we need to stick with speaking about the points Charlotte made. So has anyone else got any points or comments relating to Charlotte's statement she gave to us? Anthony, is that you looking to speak?
Yes, please, Chair. I think it's been made very clear by both Charlotte and Ian that the proposals that this falls out of financial frameworks is untrue. You know, and it's been clarified there quite clearly by the senior officers directly responsible, both legally and financial, for these decisions, that it does fall within the framework and within the decisions that we've made. What I would be interested to know is, I believe that Councillor Thompson, obviously, as the chair of Overview and Scrutiny, would like to present. So I think it's only fair to Councillor Thompson to put that information in for us to sort of take an informed viewpoint from what's been discussed in OSB, Chair. I think that would be really helpful.
Okay, yes, thank you very much. Anybody else? Last chance for anybody who wants to comment or make raise an issue relating to Charlotte's statement to us. Okay, no, that's good. What we have to do now is just note. Does everyone agree that we note the comments of the monitoring officer, Charlotte Benjamin, and that goes on record? That's good. That takes us on to point 4, where we invite Janet Thompson, who's the chair of OSB, to present a report to us. Please go ahead, Janet.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Anthony. After considering all of the information provided at the call-in meeting, the Overview and Scrutiny Board felt that the decision taken on the 24th of November 2020 by the Executive needed to be reconsidered. The Board felt that there had been a lack of consultation carried out during the process and that the information provided to the Executive was inadequate. The Overview and Scrutiny Board proposes the following recommendations to assist the Executive: that the alternative uses for the site be explored, such as community uses that would be of benefit to a greater number of residents within the area by not restricting use for or to a particular purpose or group, and that further consideration be given as to whether best value for money has been achieved or whether enhanced consultation and an open tender exercise could generate additional interest or alternative proposals. I would kindly request that these recommendations be considered by the Executive and that the decision made in respect of Nunthorpe Grange Farm disposable be reconsidered. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for that, Janet. Appreciate that. So if I understand correctly, and just to be for the sake of clarity, you're raising two main points here. One is consider alternative uses for the site, and a separate one is that we have further consultation or additional consultation and look at ways of trying to achieve better value for the site. And that's what we'll be considering.
That's correct, Chair.
Thank you. Any exec members that want to ask any questions of Janet or raise any points? Mika was first. Please go ahead.
Yeah, it's just a comment, Chair, if that's okay. So thank you for allowing me the opportunity to speak. First of all, I just want to make a quick point and speak more generally about Nunthorpe. I feel residents in the past, in previous administrations, have felt, I suppose, sold up the river in terms of housing development and feeling a bit like a cash cow, and have felt that many promises have been broken, sort of promises of community centres and parkland. And that's why I actually wanted to become a councillor. We'd been promised money for schools, and it wasn't forthcoming. But I can hand on heart say that I think that things are changing. And just yesterday, we had a meeting with officers, community groups and residents, including Andy, including Councillor Rathmell. And it was to discuss ways on how to protect Nunthorpe for 10 years into the future. And the ideas have been really well received. And once they're sort of finalised, I think there'll be a massive relief to residents. I just wanted to make that point about Nunthorpe generally. However, as the exec are all aware, because of the amount of conversations we've had about it, I did oppose this decision to sell the land. I don't feel residents wanted it. I think it could set a precedent for further development, which we're trying to safeguard against with these, this Nunthorpe agreement. And I personally don't think there was enough consultation on it. But what I want to make absolutely clear is that we are not voting today on whether to sell the land. We are voting on what Janet has brought forward, and those are the recommendations of the board, which were triggered as a result of Councillor Rathmell's calling. And that those findings were that alternative community uses should be considered, e.g. a community centre, and that better value for money might be achieved by the land going to open market, being an open tender exercise, meaning that anybody will be able to bid for that land. And I just wanted to make that point clear, Chair, before we actually go to the vote.
Okay, thank you. Any other exec members that would like to make a statement or ask a question? Anthony, please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair, and Councillor Thompson for bringing this forward from OSB. Something that we've all learned today is that the processes are clearly working within the local authority. Do you know, there's been a call in, there's been a direct challenge that's triggered OSB, which in turn has brought a payment back to executive. So I think we need to be saying a big well done to the process in terms of bringing it back to discussion. I think it's and a big thank you to Janet Thompson for facilitating some of that. I think Meet has raised some valid points. We're here today to discuss the options brought forward, and I just want to touch on those because they are two very valid points, really. Firstly, could there have been an alternative use? And I know Therese to say that could somebody else have acquired the space and should it not have been for such a small group? But I think it's only fair to say that the Brethren have been a long-standing part of that community for many, many decades. You know, have contributed very positively to the Nunthorpe area in so many ways. So that to be supporting groups of that type within any ward is always a massive positive, I believe, for Middlesbrough. You know, embracing positive community groups, regardless of the religious beliefs, to do well is something that we should be looking to adapt in Middlesbrough. Great point brought forward, and it can't be dismissed. But when we start talking about best value, we're all well aware of the pressure on Nunthorpe and the pressures that developers will bring in Nunthorpe in relation to housing. And if we did push the best value option, I genuinely believe that would have led and would lead to further housing development within an area that is already crying out to stop further houses being put into that particular part of Middlesbrough. So I genuinely don't think a best value would be a benefit for the people and the residents of Nunthorpe. I actually think it would come as a detriment to the ward itself and to the communities there. And something that we must not lose sight of within this particular proposal is the fact that there's a promise and a commitment to protect space going forward, to protect the green space going forward. So not only will this assist in a community organisation looking to grow, it'll also safeguard some of those areas that are much valued within the Nunthorpe area. It's something that's being called out on right across the town, you know, across multiple different development proposals. So whilst I do thank Janet Thompson for bringing it forward, and the points are valid, I'm comfortable knowing that I believe the decisions I made were for the betterment of Nunthorpe Ward in whole. So I just wanted to share that with the group before we got to the point of voting, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Any other exec members who would like to ask a question or point? Chris Hobson, please go ahead.
Thanks, Chair. Just to go back on a couple of things that Anthony said, you know, I do think that in one sense we got best value, because if we had put it out to tender, maybe we might get a better price for it, but you would end up with probably hundreds of houses on that site. Now, the other thing that he did touch on was the fact that we are, the Brethren are going to keep that site as a green space, apart from obviously there. But they've also said that they would plant trees, they would plant fruit trees and things like that. And there can be a discussion as to whether it would be open to the community, which was another point that was made that we hadn't discussed. There's, on the parish council's website, there's quite a big paragraph about the Brethren going and speaking to the parish council. So once again, I think that shows that there has been consultation there. And for me, I think this is the best way forward for this site. If we'd taken it and said that we were going to use it and just use it for the Nunthorpe community, and put a building on it for a community centre, would that be good for the community? I mean, it's across the bypass. Would the community use it? It's not as if it's right in the middle of the community. It isn't. And for the Brethren to say that they can use it, well, yeah, okay, but to have it as just a community centre on there, I think, sorry, it's not in the right place. And I think that the money that they're getting would go towards a community centre, which would either be at the recreation club or the play area on the avenue, which is right in the middle of the community, would be much better used for the community. And I just think that the decision I made is still valid. Sorry.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Exec members, Dennis McCabe, please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I do take on board from the overview and scrutiny, but I think you've got to look at the better of the two evils with this one. If we take it out to open tender, I believe the only people you'll get interested will be developers who want to build houses on the land. And I think the bypass should be the ultimate boundary of Middlesbrough. And this is the better of the two evils. If we build this out there, it's going to be a church. There's going to be a park and ride facility planned for the future. And I think that should be the boundary of the housing. And we're going to put a caveat on there to stop any development in the next 10 years. And we can revisit that in 10 years' time and put another caveat on it. So that I'm standing by my original decision. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Dennis. Any other exec members? Ashley, please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair, and for bringing this forward. I just want to reiterate a couple of points on this. They've already been made, but I think they are really important and valid points. Value for money, totally agree that it could be re-looked at, re-evaluated. We have got higher than the asking price than what the council valued this property at, or this piece of that. And I agree totally that putting that out to tender, it is going to lead to house companies wanting to build houses. Simple as that. And I do believe this is a way of protecting the piece of land for the good of the area. Secondly, the Brethren are liked in Nunthorpe, not by everybody, but the same group. but I think the Brethren are really liked and they have a really positive influence in the area. And again, we should be encouraging groups like this to look after our area, planting orchards, planting trees, make the area look better. I think that it's a really important thing that we embrace things like this, area like this, that want to improve the area and want to improve community facilities as well. So there's my 2 cents.
Okay, thank you for that, Ashley. I don't think we've been through all the exec. Any other exec members want to make a comment or speak?
Can I just come in, Chair? I'm
yes,
really
please
sorry.
do, Dorothy.
Yeah, I'm really sorry. I've missed half of anything that everybody said because I just lost everything. But I would like to talk about the community group. I believe that the Brethren are a community group, and they have had a church in the Martin Ward for some time, and I have attended there. So they do encourage use by the community. Thank you.
Okay, that's an interesting point. That basically this place of worship, this hall, would be available to the community under certain terms. So it could be an important community asset. Okay, I'll just also chip in myself here. I think it's really important to say is that not everything we do will be popular, and sometimes lots of what we do will be unpopular. Every single thing we ever do is genuinely done with the best interests of the local community and the whole town at heart. I think that's always been the case in Middlesbrough, but sometimes the council has been bad at explaining that and has been bad at listening. I don't think we can put that right super fast, but I do think we can improve, and we're improving now. And as somebody said earlier, yesterday I was on a call with several residents from the Nunthorpe area and at least 2 councillors. Yes, 2 councillors were also on the call. And what we got back there, the feedback we got from residents, one of whom has lived in the area for 45 years, was just how pleased he is. There is a new approach, there's a breath of fresh air, there's a willingness to listen. And on both sides now, there's a willingness to compromise and find ways that we make sure we're all on the same side, because we should be on the same side. And what we need to do, wherever possible, is stop this antagonism, this head-to-head stuff, and try and work out. And usually that will involve bits of compromise. And I really believe we can get there. The point I'm making now, by the way, is not just about Nunthorpe. It's about the whole town. Every single area. If you feel overlooked, you feel you've been badly treated, I promise things will get better. And I promise we're here to listen. I'll finish there. Thank you to everyone who's commented. I'm going to ask all the exec members now to vote. Now, before I do that, do any members present want to make a quick comment that's relevant to Janet's statement?
It's just clarity, Chair. Councillor Smiles said she voted against the decision previously, but this isn't going to do anything with regards to the decision. We're just looking at OSB's advice. So therefore, is Councillor Smiles implying that the original decision of the sale to proceed won't happen, or is she saying it will? She didn't make herself clear on the point.
Okay, thank you for that. I think what Councillor Smiles is clearly saying is that as a local resident, as someone who represents the local residents, she was uncomfortable with the sale, the concept of the sale, and in fact voted against it. But she was just clarifying that today's votes are not about whether the land is sold, it's about whether we accept the recommendation of the OSB, which is quite different.
But the sale will proceed, won't it, after this, if the executive board
subject to a large range of factors. This isn't about making the sale happen. This is about starting a process, and there will be consultation. Any potential acquisition by someone like the Plymouth Brethren will be dependent on planning permission, and that is when real legal and formal consultation opens up, above and beyond the strong consultation that has already happened. So I think Councillor Smiles has made a position really clear, is that as a local resident, as a local councillor, she voted against it, and that today's vote is about something else. Councillor Smiles, did you want to chip in there?
Yeah, I suppose, yes, I did just want to make clear that we are not rerunning the vote because I voted against it. What I am trying to say, and which I want to speak about after the vote, is yes, the sale will go ahead, but if it doesn't go ahead, it could go ahead to a housing developer, and I know for sure that Nunthorpe residents do not want that.
Okay, thank you. Charlotte Bennett our monitoring officer was keen to speak. Charlotte, would you like to go ahead?
Thanks, Chair. Just to clarify a point that's been raised, the reason for a calling or a reason for a decision being called in is that there's been concern amongst members about the process of the decision making. So the reason this matter's been sent back to you today as an executive is for you to think about the points that are raised by OSB in the context of the initial decision that you made. So if you take on board any or both of the points, then it may be that you revisit the decision in question. It may be that you ask for further work to be done. So to pick up on a point that Councillor Rathmell and Councillor Smiles have made, it may be amongst the range of options open to you that you determine that further work needs to be done before the decision that you made can stand. So the decision is not an inevitability. The disposal of the asset at this point is not an inevitability. That's what you're here to decide today, whether in the light of the questions raised by OSB and further discussion, you still think that the original decision is valid, even taking on board the points that have been raised by OSB.
Okay, thank you very much. I think Andy to come in.
No, it's okay, Chair.
Okay,
Charlotte, yeah.
That's great. Okay, in that case, we'll go to the vote. And what I'd like either Sylvia or Charlotte to clarify for us here and for the record is that we consider an alternative use. The vote on that is if we do not accept that, for example, do we vote against or do we vote for?
That point, Chair, relates to the reason for calling, which was there was inadequate information originally for the executive to make the decision. So what was being asked by OSB was, please could you consider other options? You haven't, what they were saying in effect was you haven't considered enough options in the first place. You haven't considered all the information at your disposal. We ask you to think about the wider range of options. So in essence, you're voting as to whether you think that there wasn't adequate information to make the decision. Just check what the wording that as expressed by OSB was. 1 second. That alternative uses for the site be explored, such as community uses that would be of benefit to a greater number of residents within the area by not restricting use for a particular purpose or group. So what I would suggest is you vote on that point first, and then you come on to the consultation point for clarity.
Okay, and that point there, a vote against, just to be crystal clear for everyone, a vote against is a vote against the recommendation of the OSB.
A vote against is saying that you don't think more work needs to be done to explore other options. Yeah. Absolutely.
Thank you very much. Okay, so point one then, which is the alternative uses for the site be explored as community uses, as recommended by OSB. Does anybody vote for that? Does it vote to abstain? Looks like we've got one abstention, which is Mika Smiles. Just for the formality, can people, if they want to vote against, be clear and raise their hand? That's everybody else. Okay, thank you very much. That's clear. And point two, that further consideration given as to whether the best value for money has been achieved or whether enhanced consultation and an open tender exercise could generate additional interest alternative proposals. Okay, does anybody vote for that? Does anybody wish to abstain? And again, for the record, raise your hand if you vote against. That is everyone. Okay, thank you very much. That's all done then. I think it'll be up to you, Sylvia. Do you need to summarise now, or do we just close the meeting?
Sorry, Chair, just trying to get my mute off. I think now that I think what we need to do, Chair, is just clarify that the decision that was previously made will still be carried going forward.
Okay. just one second, before I do that, I can see that Mika has a hand up. Would you like to speak?
Yeah, I suppose I just wanted to communicate with the residents on why I voted the way I voted. The first point was about alternative community uses. I don't think that this is the right site for a community centre, particularly as the access would be along Church Lane. It could possibly have been considered for further community uses like Parkland, but again, I think we'd need more consultation and a better description of what that would be. But I voted against the second point because residents definitely don't want to, I don't think they want to see this go on the open market where housing developers or somebody else could snap up this land. And I just wanted to let residents know my feelings on those points. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. That's clear. Thanks very much, everyone. So it's really clear that what we've voted for as a group is stick with the initial decision that we made some weeks ago. Thanks very much. Thanks to Charlotte for extensive input, Sylvia and all the staff for organising, coordinating, the senior officers on standby. I think we had Richard Horniman and Ian Wright. And thanks to everyone else for joining in. OSB as well, thank you for your input, which was taken very seriously. Thank you, everyone. See you all soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.